Hey, good morning,
Hi.
afternoon, wherever you are.
Good
Good morning.
morning, good evening.
Exactly. GM for short. We've got some folks from the Graph Foundation here. We've got Pedro and Elizabeth. Is there anything and Andrew Clues, is there anything you guys want to say?
I just want to say hi to everyone. This is exciting. Happy to support you in any way we can. We're all here. We all want to see you succeed and have fun.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for scheduling and helping to make this happen.
I'll just say hi. Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm doing some marketing at the foundation. I want to say that after this call, we're going to move all the comms into Discord. Is that correct, Yaniv?
Yeah, that's
GRC-20
right.
channel in Discord. So I'm imagining that's where we'll post the recording. We'll kind of be moving things off the Twitter and the official channels from moving forward from here. So nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so welcome to the GRC-20 Hackathon. Super excited to be collaborating with a bunch of people and hacking, playing around with some cool new technology, and helping to kind of build the foundation for an open, verifiable web. Hopefully by now, people may have seen this blog post. If not, I recommend checking it out. It's called Knowledge Graphs are Web 3. And we have a thesis here that Web3 is it's a brand new platform for decentralized applications. I think we probably have people here who've been in the space ranging from 7+ years to some people who are newer to the space. Um, and Web3 is one of these things that we see coming up that people get really excited about, but it kind of goes through these cycles because from our perspective, we're still very much building out this platform, and I think we haven't yet seen its full form. But we really do believe that Web3 is a new platform that we're going to be able to rebuild all of our software on top of because it's just a better way to run software, right? Where all the knowledge and information is open, verifiable, and composable, and that it's going to give people a lot of freedom. It's going to enable developers to build much better apps. You're not going to be locked into these siloed platforms, and that's what we need. But we haven't really seen Web3 proliferate, and we believe that it's because we need composability and that knowledge graphs are actually a key to enabling that composability. So if you haven't seen this post, check it out. Um, but it's really core to what we want to accomplish here. And so with the knowledge graph effort that we have, it's Web3 is a really big vision, and uh, and I like to think about these three different aspects because you can think about how do we go about building out Web3 and where do we prioritize and how do we start? And I like to think about, first, our goal with the knowledge graph is we actually want to organize all the world's public knowledge and information in a decentralized way, right? You have companies like Google who have a mission of organizing and making useful the world's knowledge and information. But of course, that's a centralized company. And same thing now, we're seeing these AI companies like OpenAI and others, and they're also organizing, much of the world's knowledge and information, but again, in a centralized way. And so, we believe that the world's knowledge and information is something that anybody should be able to contribute to, and anybody should be able to understand exactly, why, certain facts are being claimed and why the state is a certain way, right? Like, what is considered the truth. And there should be a system and a way for people to impact that and to understand it. And everybody should be able to access that. And so, that's really this goal of, right, organizing all the world's public knowledge and information in a decentralized way. And additionally, there's a reason why we're doing this, because it's important for society. And we think that with these tools, we can help every individual reach their full potential and we can help solve the world's biggest challenges. And so, there's a lot of things that we can do with Web3. a lot of it, there's a lot of like, fun things that we can do, but I like to kind of think about these two things, right? At the individual level, helping every individual reach their full potential, and at a global level, thinking about like what are the big challenges in the world, and how can we actually help address that? And I think Web3 is uniquely suited, to do both of these things. And so maybe we can think about that a little bit when we're thinking about what we want to do in this hackathon. So in building out this global decentralized knowledge graph, which hopefully, but I guess you guys applied to this hackathon because you've seen some of the posts and you get the general idea. We can really break this down into two separate parts. So one is the organizing of the knowledge and information. And then the second part is building awesome Web3 apps on top that are composable. And so for this hackathon, we're going to be focusing on the first one. So, I know we've got a lot of developers here. Maybe you're excited to like build some new applications, and that's definitely something that we want to do. And we're actually going to be releasing a new set of tools that enable developers to build really sick apps on top of this knowledge graph, but that's going to be coming later as a separate step. So our first step and where we're starting here is all about bootstrapping the knowledge graph. And as developers, everybody here has superpowers, and we want to help you leverage those superpowers to organize knowledge and information more efficiently, build out your tool set for working with data and with knowledge, and it's going to be in service of this first goal for this hackathon, and then after that we can look towards the next step. So I've been talking about knowledge and knowledge graphs, and it may help to have some terminology and to kind of, place this into buckets so we can kind of understand in a little bit more specificity. So there's a distinction between data, information, and knowledge. So data is the raw, bits that, for example, are stored on a blockchain or on a server at rest or anything like that. Right. And then information is when you add structure to the raw data. And so if you've been part of the graph and you're familiar with things like subgraphs, for example, you could think of subgraphs as being a transformation from the raw blockchain data to structured information. Right. And you have a schema, it has, a shape to it, and that's the information. And then knowledge is all about creating interconnections between pieces of information to achieve a higher level of understanding. Right. And so knowledge is much more free-formed. And you can think of it a little bit like how, knowledge works in your own mind. When you're learning something, what you're doing is you're creating new connections, right? And those connections help you better understand, put things into context, and that elevates your understanding. So, so this is the difference between information and knowledge. Now, with what we're doing with this hackathon for organizing knowledge and information, we are going to be looking to ingest large amounts of information. And so at the beginning, it's going to start out looking much more like, information right in the middle here, because it's probably going to be structured if we're importing a lot of, information. It's going to, be more structured in that form. And then we can come in and we can add all of these interconnections and free form relations and really turn that information into knowledge. So let's kind of dive into this idea of a global decentralized knowledge graph, right? So we can understand like why this is so powerful. And one place you can start with this is thinking through, if you have like, entities, which every application has, things that you're describing that you're using in your app. So an entity can be any thing, any person, any place, anything like that. And entities have IDs, right? So, if you're using a relational database, you've got a row and probably there's a primary key, right? You have an ID for your thing. But typically when you have IDs, every application might have its own ID for the same thing. And that really leads to these silos. So what we'd want, right, if we're building this global graph, and that's really what Web3 is all about, is this global thing that is bigger than any one application, right? We're breaking down the silos. What you'd really want is to have globally unique IDs, right? So if we want to reference the city of San Francisco as an example, or we want to reference, a person like Vitalik, we don't want every application to be using different IDs for those same things, right? Then it's not really interoperable. And so, having globally unique IDs for entities is really a core thing to this idea, and making things so that as we're building applications, it's easy to find the existing entities, and then you can, reference those entities by ID, and that's what creates the composability. But of course, we still want people to be able to, extend things and customize things and have lots of flexibility and freedom. And with knowledge graphs, we get that as well. So beyond just having entities with globally unique IDs, I want to describe just a little bit, and just to start to form your intuition around why like knowledge graphs are a powerful data structure, right? And you've probably heard about like triples by now, right? Triples being the atomic unit of data in a knowledge graph, where the triple is an entity ID and an attribute ID and then a value combination, right? So, right, you'd say the entity ID for this, maybe the attribute ID would reference the name attribute, and then the value would be Golden Gate Park, and that gives you a single atomic data point. And the power of triples is, and specifically the way that we define them, is our attributes are actually attribute IDs, right? So you have an attribute ID for the address, for the hours, for the phone. And what that allows you to do is, if somebody's got a data point, they want to post, the address for a particular place, or they want to post the phone number, they can publish that triple, and that triple is valid regardless of how the schema might evolve over time. And if in the future you want to rename this, from phone to, for example, phone number, you can change the name of any attribute, and all of the data that was produced is still valid. And that is really powerful, especially in a world where we want to enable, thousands of different applications that are all using, shared knowledge and information and contributing to, shared knowledge, but those applications want to evolve on their own. Having this kind of a thing where, the knowledge that you produce is valid and can be interpreted by other applications is really powerful. And so the way that we define things in our knowledge graph is essentially, you can think of it as being like a flexible, almost schemaless way of representing knowledge and information. So you can have relations between different things, you can evolve things over time, and your applications are not going to break. So it's really flexible from that perspective, but you can optionally add structure by defining types and properties. And that also helps with the coordination and standardization and composability across applications. So we're not doing a deep dive on knowledge graphs today. We're going to go much deeper on GRC-20 in the next 2 weeks, but I just wanted to start out to give you a brief kind of intuition for part of how knowledge graphs are really powerful primitive for enabling composability, and really realizing this vision of Web3. And so we really believe that with the right primitives, which we believe that knowledge graphs is really a core part of that. we can actually now have this Web3 platform where you can build any kind of application, right, on top of open, verifiable, and composable knowledge, and that is going to kickstart this Web3 revolution. And with these tools, you can really rebuild anything that you can imagine. I think, all of the apps are going to switch over to being built on Web3 because at the end of the day, for users, using an application where your data is stuck and controlled by like this specific company is just a fundamentally worse user experience than having the flexibility and the freedom and being able to use different applications and reuse, whether it's your private, knowledge that you want to make available to different apps or whether it's global. It's really like this mobility, right, in the internet age. And once we kickstart the network effects, once we get enough of that interconnected knowledge and information, and then we build, even just a few really good applications that really make full use of that interoperability, we're going to create something that's just so much better than the web of today. And that's really going to ignite this Web3 revolution. Um, so this hackathon is going to be a really big piece of getting us started on this journey. So really excited to collaborate with everybody here, and hopefully you'll have a chance to build some really great tools, sharpen your own skills, meet some great people, and create something that's useful to help bootstrap this new web. So for this first week, there's a few things that we're going to be focusing on. So, first thing for people to start thinking about is whether you'd like to work by yourself, which is totally acceptable. We expect, many people will choose to work by themselves, or if you'd like to get paired with somebody. So I would say based on what I've seen in the applications is probably something like 70% of the people participating are quite technical. And then we also accepted some people that we thought, either had good writing skills or good domain expertise. And it could actually be nice to pair people, a technical person and a non-technical person. The non-technical person could help with some of the content. And so that's something you can consider what you'd like there. And then what we want to do is help people choose an ownership area. And what we want to do is try to like reduce duplicated work, right? As much as possible, we want to make it so that you can find an area to focus on that is interesting and exciting to you. But we want to coordinate a little bit so that if you go off and you do a good job with the thing that you're doing, that we'll be able to, include that in the knowledge graph, and it's not going to be throwaway. So we're going to focus on that is going to be a big priority for this week. You'll be able to start getting your tools ready. So making sure that you've got your initial, programming environment and all the things that you need for your hacking. So that'll be a focus for this week. And if you feel like you've got a good ownership area that you're converging on, and already start to do some research and identifying, some data sets that might be good to start with. So let's look at selecting ownership areas. So as you know, we've got three big areas we're going to be focusing on for this hackathon. We've got jobs, education, and regions. So just going to chat about that a little bit so people can get a good idea. Jobs, education, and regions is, you saw from those initial goals, if we kind of come at this from the perspective of how can we help each individual reach their full potential, and how can we help solve some of the world's biggest challenges, right? That's kind of how we aligned here. And so, my sort of framing here is, the world's going through a lot of change. And, there are a lot of people where maybe, jobs are getting displaced, or, the economy is rapidly evolving, and people need to figure out, what's their place in the world, and, how can they be most effective, and how can they do something that, they can provide for their families. Maybe they find a mission, something they care about. And so we want to help people, we want to grow the economy and help people find, paths that give them happiness and fulfillment in life. And then on the other side of that, and also related to like this big change that, is happening in the world, is probably a lot of people are like, stuck in jobs where they're not feeling super fulfilled. And that's weird when on the other hand, there are some big problems in the world and there are some things that can really use a lot of change and could really use, some revolutionizing. And so if we put those pieces together, maybe we can help make the crypto economy something that really matches people, in the right places. And then people also in crypto can build, great protocols and coordination tools, and we can actually help, revolutionize large parts of the economy. So if we start with jobs, we can look at things like, different industries, and map those out. We can see specific like roles, right? What are the different roles in those industries and how do they map to goals, right? If there's like top level goals, different industries are focused on different things. How do these roles and industries actually map to specific missions and things like that? What skills are required to do those jobs? Um, and if someone's actually looking for a job, something like a job board where you could see job openings and again have that mapped out to the different roles, the different skills, the different goals, things like that. Um, even things like, different personality types and, how that could again, help people kind of find the right role for them. So lots of things when it comes to just, the job market and helping people find the right jobs and kind of understanding different industries and the economies that are happening there. So that's kind of jobs. We're calling this jobs really, I would kind of view this more broadly as like industry, right? So kind of just looking at the different industries and with this as being like a sort of example focused area. And then that's of course also tied to education because a lot of jobs you can't do without education. Now, I started here with kind of, we're calling this an academic fields here, and I think we're going to expand this to just being all education. I mean, it's interesting to consider the changes in, you know, um, learning generally. Um, most of our countries and, have an existing kind of primary school education. A lot of times that's, public schools, it goes through high school and then you go to university. Um, and, I think there are a lot of things happening, in the universities right now that are causing people to, I think, question whether for example, in the US, it's worth the large money in student debt that people take on to go to universities. Even, with primary education, question whether, these schools with large classes where everybody's kind of going in this assembly line sort of fashion is the best way to educate children. So, I think all across the board, people are having questions about like what really is the best way to do education. Um, and so I think in the knowledge age, we want to be a little bit more flexible. And, there's a lot of things that, I mean, obviously, learning is so important. But maybe there's opportunities for people to do more, self-directed learning. Maybe there's opportunities to get paired up with different, teachers and mentors. Maybe there's new types of schools that can be formed. But, as a starting point, just organizing the different areas of learning, and there's still, right, courses, whether these are online or in person or whatever, right? There's the concept of courses. You want to, go deep on some area. Those courses are probably divided up into individual lessons, right? You'd have specific topics in those different areas um, that you can learn about. You could imagine even organizing curriculum, and having that be part of the knowledge graph. And it's cool to, imagine in the future how we could kind of decentralize, curation of curriculum and have different experts, practitioners, as well as educators participating in the curating of, what are the best, tutorials or videos or guides for any given topic and things like that, maybe even personalized to people's learning styles. So there's all kinds of things that when we really organize things in the best possible way, right? When it's knowledge and not just information, we're going to be able to build really cool experiences for all of this stuff. We want to map out the different schools, right? Because there are already, plenty of good schools, either, higher education or um, things that are more vocational, the different degrees, certifications, things like that. So all of this would be really great to kind of map out on the education side. And then finally, the third focus area for this hackathon is regions. And this can be everything from the country level all the way down to a local level. Right. So here's an example of a page for the city of San Francisco, or maybe we have things like upcoming events and news and trending restaurants, things that are places, shops, things like that, neighborhoods, culture, activities, lots of different things. So, people have different things that they're interested in, but, we all live somewhere. We're part of local communities. And there's a lot that we could be organizing at a local level or again, rolling up. And this, can include everything from governments that are organized at a regional level to, any of these things. So we want to have these base entities, right? We want to bootstrap the knowledge graph where I can search for any country and there's already an entity for that country, right? Or I can search for a city and there's an entity for that city. And we can start with basic information, but that can expand over time. Things like news, right? Local news or local events, places, restaurants, or maybe an example of a type of place, but there's lots of different places, local businesses, parks, things like that. And you can have goals at a local level. So really what I tried to do here is just kind of give an example so people can start to place, some example types of content that we could have in these different areas. We do want this to be open-ended. We want to give you a chance to really, decide where it is you want to dive into, but we thought that it would be helpful to at least give you guys some ideas of some of the sorts of things that we could be organizing. And, really the goal here is to find the intersection, right, behind what's the most useful and what you're interested in, right? So we are at the beginning, and this is very large, like broad and horizontal. So, there's really unlimited things that we can do, unlimited knowledge that we can organize. Um, when we think about what's the most useful, I mean, we started with those, high level goals, and that's, the lens that I think through. But, we can think about things like what information would be the most useful for people that want to build Web3 applications. Because if they have this information already organized, that'll enable new types of apps. Maybe there's apps that you'd like to see built. So that's a way to think about what's most useful. And then, what you're interested in, this could be related to your background, your personal interests, maybe, what you're working on, maybe something that you want to build. If you have an idea for a startup or for your existing company, you know, anything that can help enable applications that you're personally interested in would be a good focus. And we want to try to find this intersection as much as we can. Okay, so that covers the focus areas. And that's going to be a big priority for this week, helping people identify, specific areas of ownership. And I guess just the last thing that I'll kind of say about this is the way that we're going to be thinking about the ownership areas is, you can choose one or multiple of, the jobs, education, or regions. And then for each of those, you want to select a set of types, right? So, these are all kind of types, right? Like a city, it'd actually be like a news story or something, but, category of news or something like a country or like place, right? Like a restaurant. Those are all types. These are for the most part. And then you can also have like a way of filtering that down, right? So some kind of criteria, right? Maybe you want to do cities in South America, right? So you want to kind of think in that way of like, what are the types that you're interested in? And then, what kind of filter, what kind of way of dividing that up would help create some kind of segment of things that you're interested in. All right, so that's the ownership areas. And then let's talk about tools, because we're going to be doing a lot of hacking. So really throughout this hackathon, you'll have the opportunity to build up your tool set that you use for working with data. And, as we know, data, is the new oil. It's at the core of everything. And so, you having the best possible tools for working with data will help get you some superpowers. So the way that this is going to work is you're going to want to have your own environment for running your code and storing your data and working on your data locally before you publish it up. Right. So essentially you're going to have some kind of a local database. And then, you can have agents, you can have scripts, whatever it is that goes and like fetches data from different data sources and then puts it into your local database. And then from there, you can, run scripts, you can clean up that data, you can label it, you can do whatever you want in your own kind of local environment. And then you can basically publish that to the knowledge graph. Architecturally, what that looks like is the content itself is going to get uploaded to IPFS, and then it's going to get anchored on the blockchain. And this is how we'll have global consensus and we'll have a global view on the state of the knowledge graph. And then we've got an indexer that's going to be indexing that. And so, most of you are probably familiar with subgraphs. We're also now working on a new knowledge graph data service that is actually based on a graph database called Neo4j. And that is the data service we're going to be using, the indexer for this knowledge graph. You can have different indexer implementations, but that's going to be one that we haven't released yet, but we're excited to start talking about, and you guys will be some of the first developers to have a chance to play with it. So this is the general sort of architecture, right? You need your own environment for doing compute, for ingesting the data, for storing it in the database, for working on it, cleaning it up, getting it the way you want, and then you'll be uploading that. And it's all, these are all public networks, right? So any knowledge that you organize as part of this hackathon, it's going to be, open. You'll be able to use it in your future applications, right? You're not taking a dependency on any individual company, and that's really the beauty of Web3. So, and I don't know how this got in here. This should say TypeScript. So first question you might ask yourself is which languages do you want to work with, or language? There's plenty of great scripting languages. Python is very common for data. So definitely, I think Python would be a good way to go for people that are familiar with Python. TypeScript, another great scripting language, or depending on what you want to do, Rust or Go or anything else. So that might be a choice you want to make this week. And you could take a look at different, data libraries and things that you want to play with, and that can help you make the decision. So this will be, one of the first choices you make. Next choice that you make might be like what database you want to use locally. So this could be a great opportunity if you haven't had a chance to play around with graph databases. Maybe this is a good opportunity for you to learn and play with the graph database. So Neo4j is one that we would recommend. It has a graph query language called Cypher that's really powerful. It allows you to kind of do graph traversal and can do certain algorithms with the graph database like Neo4j that aren't necessarily practical to do with relational databases. This could be a good opportunity to learn and practice. graph databases are also becoming very popular with AI because they're actually a really great way to, you issue a graph query and you get context that's relevant to any question that you might ask with an LLM. And that way you can ground your LLM responses based on up-to-date, accurate knowledge from like a graph database. So this could be a good way to go. If you already have experience with Postgres, you can, use that, or SQLite could be even more lighter weight, or something else that we're big fans of is Parquet. For those that don't know, Parquet is kind of a data format that's uses columnar storage. And so you actually have essentially these flat files that you can query directly because it's almost like, the indexes are almost like built in. And so it's actually quite efficient to store. But you can kind of query and kind of, query it in place. So there's a bunch of interesting data tools around Parquet, Arrow, things like that. So those could be fun, interesting technologies to play with as well. So you'll want to make this decision, what kind of database or data stack and tools you want to use, and let's spend this first week getting that environment up and running. So you could decide whether you want to run this database locally, whether you want to use a hosted instance somewhere. But whatever that is, this would be a good week to kind of get your, data stack up and running. This wouldn't be a data hackathon without some AI. And there are some really great options for different, AI models that you could use. In the past, we'd have to do all of this stuff manually, and that would take a lot of time. These AI tools are just incredibly powerful. So hopefully you've had a chance to play around with, some of these AI models. Maybe there's some models that you've wanted to play around with more, and this is a great opportunity for you to do that. Yeah, and to learn from each other. So hopefully we'll get a chance over the next 5 weeks to really, get a good sense of, which models are good for what. We can get kind of to the bleeding edge and we can automate a lot of our tasks. And there's things that we can do now with AI that would have just taken forever to do before. So a good opportunity to really hone your AI chops. And, one of the things that I think we want to start doing when it comes to this type of data work is, to build out these workflows where we're automating as much as we can with AI, but then we're still involving, the human in the loop. So this might be the sort of tools that we build, and there's some interesting things already out there that are open source that we could play with, but kind of the tooling around this process, right? If there's tasks that we want to automate, okay, how do we automate as much as possible, but also maybe have some kind of a user interface or something to let people check, make sure that everything is accurate, looks good, fix it if it's not, and kind of, streamline that workflow. So things like that, I think would be, really great to hack on the tooling front. And on the compute side, depending on the type of content that you're organizing, it could be something that is very factual and static, in which case something like a one-time import could be fine. Or it could be something that is, that changes over time. If we've got something like job postings, maybe we want to have a job board for a particular industry that's up to date and showing you, the open jobs. That's something that could change day by day. So then we got to decide, okay, how are we going to keep that up to date? Do we want to run a cron job? Do we want to have an agent that's watching different things and deciding, when to update it? So this is a decision that you'd want to make based on the type of content that you're organizing and how often it changes. And that might be part of the data stack and the compute stack that we want to get up and running, in this first week so that you have a computing environment that can do what you want to do. Then when it comes to identifying data sets, right, once you kind of have an ownership area, you can choose. There's a lot of great, open data that's already out there. There are large data sets for things like countries and cities and things like that that exist on GitHub. Sometimes there's CSVs or different data formats. There's existing open, knowledge data sets, things like Wikidata that actually have a lot of content. Now, they're going to have their own ontologies and ways of structuring that information. But there's already some great data sets out there. So maybe we just find an existing data set and we import things from there. For some things we might want to do web scraping, and there's now amazing tools, also AI assisted or otherwise, for doing web scraping. AI itself, basically, these AI models have been trained on like the entire web. And so, you can go to the web or you can just go to these AIs and sometimes they've got what you want already kind of directly and you can ask it to format things for you. And so you can go that route. Or, there might be open APIs or APIs that you can use. So you want to identify, these are some examples of different kind of data sets. You can already start thinking about that stuff kind of this week. And so when we look at this hackathon, we could break it up into roughly 3 stages. So for the first 2 weeks, we're going to be focusing on, structuring the information. So starting this week on getting the environment and choosing ownership areas. Then we're going to look for each of those areas, how we want to structure the information. What are the types and properties and things like that that we want to use. We'll be able to start, ingesting the data into your local data stores and working with it there. So that'll be the first 2 weeks. Then we're going to focus on importing that knowledge into the knowledge graph. We're going to be able to dive in much deeper into GRC-20, into governance. There's some really interesting governance questions, right? And this is where, going to that question of, what is it that, people consider truth and what kind of processes do we have in place to verify information? A lot of these things could be a combination from manual things to, reputation that people build as like experts in different domains. We can include AIs in some of this. So, lots of interesting questions when it comes to the governance and organizing and verifying of knowledge and information. So all of the importing and all of that kind of stuff will kind of be weeks 3 through 4. And then finally, once we have all that information in there, then we can look to add relations, interconnections, enrich. And as we get to the more graphy side of things, there's interesting things that we can do with our knowledge graphs that you can't really do with the more fixed, tabular forms of information. So that'll be a fun week to go kind of deeper into really trying to get to that, true knowledge kind of stage in our week 5. Some details about the hackathon. So we've got 150,000 GRT in prizes, generously gifted by the Graph Foundation. So excited by that. It's going to be based on, subjective assessments, right, by the judges. We do want to make it so that people that, work hard during the hackathon, have a good chance of getting rewarded. And so the goal would be for, roughly the top 30% of participants to get something. So this isn't going to be like a first place, second place, third place gets everything and then, nothing for anybody else. We want it to be so, if, you contribute a good amount and you work hard on this, we want to try to get you rewarded. So we're leaving some flexibility, but we're really going to do our best to try to judge the submissions and reward, quality work. And so roughly the things we'll be looking at in our evaluation is, we could say quantity, but, I feel like that kind of goes without saying that, we want to have knowledge that we're organizing here. It's really, quality and accuracy, I would say is kind of the most important thing. you know, the usefulness of the information is important, right? How many different applications can we enable with this information? You know, how much effort, you know, we'll be kind of looking at that. Collaboration. So this is a competition, but at the same time, it's really a chance for you all to learn, right? And you're all going to learn, you're all going to improve your skills better if you're collaborating with each other. And so we really want to promote, you know, information sharing. You know, it'll be funner if, you know, you discover some new things, you can tell people about it. And we'll see those types of contributions. We'll see how people are helping each other, and if you make tools available for each other, whatever kind of stuff like this, we want to be open sourcing and things. So we'll take note of all of those things, and that'll, you know, factor into the judging. You know, we want to see what kind of tools you create. So, you know, partially here we're organizing knowledge, but also, you know, we're creating tools so that as an ecosystem, right, we want to have more and more people that have the tools so that they can really organize this global decentralized knowledge graph. So that's another big part of what we'll be looking at. Some logistics. So this is going to be a 5-week hackathon. Every week we're going to have a kickoff call, and that'll be a chance to kind of educate on a new area that is relevant to everybody. So there's a lot of great content that we would love to, you know, educate everybody on, to arm you to be a great Web3 developer and to be able to contribute to this global decentralized knowledge graph. And then every week we'll have a call for each of the 3 focused areas. And this will be much more of a discussion and an opportunity for people to share, you know, what they've been doing from others, to get feedback, to have conversation, you know, because, you know, when we're talking about, you know, these knowledge graphs, you do want to have collaboration and standardization and things like that. So it is just one giant global knowledge graph that we're creating here. So we're going to have these calls for collaboration. At the end of every week or throughout the week, we'll send out a form. So you can just kind of post any updates from the week there. And that'll help us with grading at the end. And then at the end, we'll have the final submission. All right. So at the beginning, as we're doing this stuff, we'll be working in a test net environment. So, you know, it'll be a little bit more resistant to if we make, you know, mistakes and things like that. And then by the end, we'll move over, publish everything onto the mainnet environment. And then your knowledge will be part of the global knowledge graph, and you'll be able to show it, you know, forever into the future. You'll be able to show people how, you know, you contributed to the global knowledge graph early on. So next steps. We've got the Discord. If somebody can post the link to the Discord, the graph Discord, we've got a GRC-20 Hackathon channel. So please join this Discord right away. If you could do it now, that would be amazing. You can say hi, introduce yourself. So that's where we're going to be discussing, having conversation, answering questions, all that kind of stuff. Today, we'll be sending out a questionnaire right after this call with more specific questions to help you know, assign those different ownership areas. And so please fill that out as soon as you can, so that we can start to help see, you know, maybe if we have too many people in one area, you know, we want to try to divvy things up so it's pretty spread out, and you each get an area that is interesting to you to work on. From there, we'll send out, you know, if it looks like based on the questionnaire, it's really obvious, you know, where you should focus, we may just give you a thumbs up. Otherwise, you know, we might send like maybe a subset or something like that. So we'll kind of, based on your initial answers, we'll kind of tell you our thoughts and suggestions. If some things aren't clear, we need a little more information, we may ask you to hop on a quick call. But at the end of that, essentially we're doing a 3-way handshake here. So finally, you'll kind of confirm based on our suggestion, like, yes, this is what I'll take on. And at that point, we'll kind of have ownership areas, and then you'll be free to spend the rest of the 5 weeks kind of focused on the areas, and still going as deep as you want, but at least you'll have a good chance that that at least that will be yours, and minimizing duplication. All right, so I just covered a lot of ground. I've got let's see, just a few minutes here for questions.
As a non-techie anyway to be part of us? Not
Yeah,
sure.
so we do we did accept some people who are non-technical to the hackathon. I think it's around maybe 30% or so are non-technical, maybe less, 25%. And so one of the questions that we've got is, are you open to being part of a team? Would you like a collaborator? And I do think that it would be quite nice to have some pairs of technical people with non-technical people, because the technical people probably mostly want to focus on coding. And it could actually be really nice to have someone who could go in, review the content, improve the content. There's really two main types of content for a lot of this stuff. I mean, we have like text and numbers and things like that. And then we also want to have imagery. I think imagery is an important part of Web3. We want things to be, visually beautiful. We now have amazing Gen AI tools, for example, but whether it's discovering example, Creative Commons licensed imagery or generating your own, I think there's plenty of things that non-technical people could do to help, with the quality of the content in a pair. So definitely there could be spots for non-technical people. So React is not a language, it's a framework. And there isn't really a UI component per se for this. If you want to have a UI, you can, but I mentioned that there were going to be kind of two, big stages, and this initial stage and the focus of this hackathon is all around the organizing knowledge and information. So, if you want to visualize that, or for example, if you want to build tooling, I'd mentioned, for example, tooling around having, humans in the loop to kind of review content and things like that. That could have a UI component. But otherwise, we're really much more focused on the knowledge. And then in the future, we'll have another hackathon that's much more focused on the user interfaces. There is not a WhatsApp group, there is the Discord channel. So please, right now or right after this call, hop in the Graph Discord. I believe Pedro posted the link. So please join the Graph Discord if you're not there already, and join the GRC-20 Hackathon channel. Pop in there and say hi. We'll send everybody the initial questionnaire right after this call. I did just want to do a few, well, we can do the introductions on the next call. So we've got some people from the Geo team here, from the Playgrounds team, that you'll be able to work with, but we'll keep that for the next call. So super excited to work with everybody. I think it's going to be a really fun 5 weeks, and I think we're going to have a lot to show hopefully afterwards, both in terms of your skills and your tools that you build up for yourselves, as well as to really bootstrap the open, decentralized knowledge graph that can power Web3. So thank you everybody for joining. Super excited for the weeks ahead. Pop in the Discord, say hi, and we'll see you all online.
Bye, folks. Take care. Thanks all for joining. I'll see you on Discord.